Mm.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
guys, and welcome. This is Viral Outbreak Gaming's new podcast format. We're going to do them live and then put them on the various platforms, YouTube and all that after. But we're going to make it a more common occurrence, probably every Sunday. Take about an hour. Talk about our gaming lives, stuff like that. Um,
The grind. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
we've always been a more casual kind of gaming site and just doing stuff when we can. So,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure. But, I mean, this will be a little more rigidity that we can get into like a schedule
Yeah,
because our streaming
podcasts are pretty
schedule.
easy, so
Yeah.
I can see that for sure. Let me just
Just
check
get up
some
here and shoot.
sound.
Yeah.
I can see that. Hold on, let me
Things
just
that
check
we care about enough to talk about, which is there's a fair amount. We have a lot that we care to talk about.
it.
This week's topic is Capcom specifically, and
Yeah.
Capcom on, like sort of things that we would love to talk about, which I have a list of topics. But number one that we will definitely discuss at this current time will be the revival of dead franchises.
Yeah.
There are a couple, well, more than a handful of franchises that Capcom has abandoned, kind of left them on the back burner. And through recent interviews with the producers and directors of Division 2 and Division 1, we know that they are looking into these older franchises, more specifically in the fighting game side of things, which is good for Cam because Cam loves Power Stone.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that one was rumored in, I think, an NVIDIA leak that supposedly in the future going to release a new Power Stone
The
game.
main creator said for years that he wants to make a new entry to the series, so.
That's good. They need to. It was fun. It was unique, and it hasn't really been replicated. Kind of what the formula of that was, with maybe the exception of Square Enix's Ehergize, however you pronounce that. It had a very similar structure to.
There's definitely party brawlers that are similar, but nothing kind of captures its kind of beauty, I guess,
Essence. Yeah,
essence.
yeah, that's the thing. Like Power Stone. So for those of you who don't know, uh, Power Stone is a competitive battle arena brawler type platformer esque game, where we have essentially you have any. I think is it can it go up to like 4 players? Like I fail to
The
remember
first
how many
game
fighters.
is 1v1, two-player, and then the second one is like a full-on 2v2 or a free-for-all four-player
Yeah,
brawler type thing.
yeah, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
it was originally designed to kind of fit into that niche 3D fighter that games like Battle Arena Toshinden and even the Soul Calibur series, which has just showed up on the behind me here, Soul Blade, Soul Calibur, Tekken, things of that nature. It was put in there, and Capcom's venture forth in this area, which at this time were primarily known as producers of 2D fighting games. Um, they kind of went with this, and I think the Street Fighter EX series as more of a 3D, like a venture into 3D to see what
Wasn't
they could
School
accomplish.
Rumble also?
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that also was another one. And then later, what's another one? I think it was God Hand, kind of like that, or is that more of like an action adventure?
Yeah, God Hand's an action adventure. That's
Yeah, I know it
very
had elements of fighting game stuff in it.
well. Yeah, it's kind of like how Shenmue's a fighting game.
Yeah, so essentially, God Hand is more of a precursor to probably Asura's Wrath,
Yeah.
which we will definitely go into that one as well later on. But Power Stone had a wide variety of characters that were, I won't call them tropish, but they definitely occupied various niches within like anime communities. You had sort of the like the Ultraman type mech type power suit fighter in the
You
main
had
character as
Son
Falcon.
Goku,
You had Goku, like you
literal
literally had the
Goku,
Goku
because he
ripoff.
had a Kamehameha and
Mhm. Power
Spirit
up state.
Bomb.
Yeah.
You had your Japanese ninja and samurai.
Mhm. Yep. He had
Um,
a brawler type, a big bruiserly, thick
yeah,
boy.
so Galuda, the Aboriginal guy, was a kind of a big bruiser, but also his name was Gunrock. Yeah, literally
Rock.
Gunrock, the big
Yeah.
American guy. You had Jack, who was basically just Jack the Ripper ripoff.
Yeah. Wasn't
Um,
he like a mummy though?
yeah,
Yeah, it's like a mummy. It's a really weird take. Yeah, so the designs themselves are very exaggerated
yeah.
and
Well, they were
original
based off of the region that they're located in,
for
right?
sure.
So
So like there you can see Jack, who is like he said Jack the Ripper, but he's a
yeah,
mummy, and then you have the
Rouge, the
like the what's the
fortune
word I'm looking
teller.
for here? Fortune teller who had like kind of an Arabic theme to her, an Arabic
Yeah.
theme. There's Galuda, which is obviously the Native American theme. Um, yeah, so it occupied a bunch of different niches, and kind of the premise of the game, for those of you who don't know, is your goal was to, in this battle arena that it's showing here, to collect these power stones while whittling down your opponent's health. And when you collected enough of them, I believe it's three,
Three, yeah.
yeah, you enter into a super like state, a hyper power up state, an install for some of you who are used to fighting games. And you would have access to way more powerful stats, like better stats, strength, speed,
And a
uh,
special, or two special moves, sorry.
two special moves that generally wiped out your opponent. Very hard to dodge around, but can be managed if you're good enough in the game. You notice that also there's a lot of environmental play here. You can pick up varying weapons and objects to throw or
Yep,
use
or
against your
climb
opponent.
'em up and like dive at people, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
got.
it
Go ahead.
introduced this really cool, um, instead of blocking, there's no block button, there's dodging, so like spot dodging. Essentially,
Yes,
like in Smash Bros, at the last second, if you press a direction while they attack you, you can move in that direction, either behind them or away from them.
exactly. Yeah, and it has. So one of the things I liked about it, and this is kind of what I noticed, in addition to kind of like of the transforming states and the environmental aspect. I really enjoyed the latter of that because it harkens back to their beat 'em ups like Final Fight
Yeah.
and stuff like that, where the items are readily available when you're traveling through the platformer, and it like the as a three-dimensional effect, although this is more fully realized than things like Final Fight, Streets of Rage, and all of that. Um, but it takes that concept of being able to utilize things that are around you and implements them into a fighting game-esque feel in a way that most other fighters don't. And I mean, like I said, realistically, Energize, and that's around the same time as this, is the only thing I can think of that kind of plays similarly to this, where you're in a 3D area, you're running around, full eight-way movement, um, grabbing things to use to your advantage while having access to a move set.
Yep, and a moveset that changes depending on the different places of where you're at. Like, you it can interact with poles. Big characters can throw or like use the pole to like hit people with, or smaller characters use it to like jump off
Mhm.
of or swing around. So like, there's a lot of technical stuff to it. It's a very technical game.
Yes, for sure. Like watch. So I've played a couple times with Cam, and he dominates me. And dominates pretty much everybody he plays against in this particular game. It's a easy to pick up, hard to master type
Yeah.
game, which is that's kind of a sign of a lot of good fighters nowadays. Is like it has a low entry level bar, but then towards the higher level, people when you're trying to go up against people who actually know how to play the game, it can be kind of daunting if you don't know what you're doing. Um, so from there, sort of like the introduction to the series, which we kind of went over. It has been what 20 years since it's had an entry into this franchise,
Well,
correct?
Power Stone 2 was like very end of the Dreamcast's cycle, but they did release a PSP remake of them all, but it's actually really not good.
Yeah.
It apparently suffers from really bad loading times.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, and I just double checked, yeah, Power Stone 2 originally release date was April 2000.
Yeah,
So it's been from the
because the original
original
was
release of the title.
99.
Yeah, it's been over 20 years.
Yeah, and
So
the second game actually took a lot from the first
mhm,
and just added more to it. The interactive levels, like there's a bunch of levels where you'll actually like move around, like the level auto scroll or do some other weird stuff.
yeah. Yeah, it's and what's funny about this one is it's like a mock fixed camera type because
Yeah.
it's all like it's got the feel of a 2D slash 3D fighter in the vein of Tekken and Soul Calibur and things of that nature. But the movement is like a big part of this particular game because of the eight-way movement that's fully realized. Um, Unlike Tekken, which is more about the eight-way movement is more dashes. It's 2D plane or 2D figures on a 3D plane where you're constantly rotating the plane. This one, because of the fixed camera angle, you are literally moving about X, Y, and
Mm.
Z axis. So that's an interesting aspect that I'm sure most people wouldn't be used to if they were to pick up this particular game. Um,
Yeah, it has it like every fighting game. You always face the opponent though,
Mhm.
which so it doesn't feel wonky. Like we're making it sound a little too complicated.
well, I mean, from the technical aspect,
Yeah,
that's what it is, right?
yeah,
XYZ plane simply means that you can run up and down, left to right, and
yeah.
up like jumping into the third dimension. Um,
But
so
like
and it,
you have other games like Battle Arena Toshinden where like you just cannot hit your opponent at all sometimes.
Mhm.
Just the way it is.
Right, and like I said, it sounds technical, but as you can
Yeah.
see from the behind me, it's chaos. It's more chaotic. Unlike Smash Brothers, which is funny that did that behind me as I was going into that. Um, there's kind of there's a f- a school of thought with respects to how fighting games operate. There is in order to be like a highly technical fighting game, you have one of two things, and you can have a combination of the two. But the main one is
Hmm.
spacing and precise frame data and attacks and things like that. Knowing how far away you need to be from your opponent specifically in like a slower based footsie based fighter
Hmm.
on a 2D plane. So like if you're going left to right and there is no 3D movement, um, games like Street Fighter in particular, you have and Mortal Kombat, you have a limited field, and then where you push your button, and how far it reaches and and how fast it recovers determines what the optimal punish is or response is. And then you Brothers. Smash Brothers is more movement based. Your positioning in a Smash Brothers title will help you avoid attacks and set your opponent up for situations where you can punish them. But it's not usually reliant on punishing frame data with respects to being like a footsies based, where you're standing stationary and you have like very limited jumping. This kind of takes the movement aspect Power Stone does and amps it up to like 1,000%
Hmm.
because there's yes, there's like blocking or dodging as you said in this game, but
Yeah.
this one is since it's a 3D fighter, you can avoid attacks simply just by not being there.
Yep.
Whereas a lot of the times in like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat games, you're forced into a situation where you have to block, just the way it is. Um, so it's really funny to watch sort of the competing thoughts of like what determines the spectrums for a fighting game be pushed
Hmm.
to like another level in Power Stone. Um, kind of where I wanted to segue from in with respects to if the series does come back as it's hinted to, where would you like the series to go? Like,
Uh,
what do you want to see return? What do you want to see stick around? What do you want to see them not change? What do you want to see them change?
I would like them to make it a bit more grandiose than just an arcade game, since, arcades are dead, basically.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
it was set up like an arcade game, but in the Dreamcast version of Power Stone 2, they did have a few things that were actually really unique to a lot of games, not just fighters. There was an item shop that basically every time you play the original mode, you would pick up weapons and those weapons would carry over to your inventory in the shop. And then you could combine or like mix weapons and create more weapons. So like there's probably like 200 weapons in the game, ranging from like the Psycho Gun from Space Adventure Cobra, or like Guts's Dragon Slayer, or like some other crazy stuff. So actually having a decent one-player mode would be ideal, and having unlockables like that, as well as Power Stone 2 introduced the in the final stage when you're against the boss. There's like some like a quasi or like pseudo beat 'em up stage, which I think the game would definitely benefit from the single player being like a almost a beat 'em up.
Okay. So like a revisit from like the Final Fight days and kind of taking that concept that they've implemented into the core mechanics of the fighter and making it
Yeah,
more like dumbed down and sort of like kind of how like Shenmue has or oh what's the series that has like 7 games, Yakuza, where it has
Yakuza.
like like different things that you can do that kind of transform that game from a
Yeah.
um like a third person action beat 'em up to like, oh, here's a section where you're playing like old school arcade games. Or like you're doing a dart mini game and stuff like that. You kind of want it to be like, here's the core fighting game, and then when you a different mode, it transforms into this something that's like classic Capcom.
Yeah, like just because the whole concept of the game is you're traveling around the world looking for the power stones, so like there's definitely stuff you can exploit in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah.
I still would
Um,
like it to keep its like core gameplay when you're doing like versus, obviously,
but see,
but
that's what I was gonna go into.
yeah.
So, do you want it to maintain this limited, like enclosed, or do you want them to, if when they revisit this series, do you want the arenas to be bigger? Do you want the movement to be more um hyper focused, like hyper mobility? Do you see Dissidia, which was another prime example that I was
Mm.
gonna bring up, and freaking man, this video is so perfect from let me who is this again? This would be let me check and see which video this is from. Top Hat Gaming Man. Perfect. Like he's got all the points that I am gonna lay out like queued up. Um, so you have these battle arena games that still persist to this day and kind of have built themselves up on the backbone of these original platform fighters like Power Stone. Um, things like Naruto Shippuden and the entire like Naruto collected battle arena games that they have. There were a couple of DBZ-esque, or no, DBZ specific battle arena fighters that I believe were made by Namco as well. Then
Um,
there's
yeah, I mean, there's the what was it? Sagas or something had like a
Yeah, the sagas, and there's the
yeah,
Dragon Ball Kakarot one that just came
yeah,
out not too long
Kakarot.
ago as well. But then you have things like Dissidia from Square Enix. You have things like Pokken Tournament from Namco. All of these. Oh, what was the other one that just came out with all the um, One Piece and Dragon Ball
Oh, yeah,
and
Jump All
Jump
Stars
Jump
or
Force. Yeah,
Jump Force.
that one. So is there anything that you would have them take from those particular arena fighters and implement into this one? I know you don't want the fixed camera of Dissidia where it's hyper focused on one character and the camera moves with you. I think you would still probably like to maintain that here's the open battlefield
Yeah,
and
it
the
still needs
camera
kind of that
stays fixed.
isometric view. I'd like the arenas to be as small as Power Stone 1. Power Stone 2, they're a little big. So
Okay.
like there's a lot of dead space and kind of doesn't reward you for going in.
You think that could be fixed though if they increase the mobility, made it more of a fast paced fighter? I mean, it's already decently fast, but if they made it to where you had more mobility options, like better dashes or multiple dashes and things like that.
Yeah, and approaches and stuff like that. I honestly like they I like how simple the original Power Stone is, where there's the punch, the kick, the
Mhm.
grab, and like the aerial versions of said things. When you get too complicated with something like Naruto Shippuden, where there's like so many, techniques, kind of makes it a little hard to
It makes it bloated.
more chaotic.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you have to anticipate all of the things that your opponents can a little overwhelming.
Yeah, it's kind of like
So,
comparing Smash Bros. 64 to like Ultimate.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, there's one that I mentioned that brought up an interesting, method of, camera work in it, and it was Pokken Tournament, and that one I find interesting for this particular discussion because Pokken Tournament has a cool little feature with its camera system where if you're far away from one another, that Power Stone, like, camera movement and zoom out effect where the camera like moves essentially with your character. It's got the isometric type of view, but then
Right.
the closer you get to one another, when you get within a certain range, it switches over to a more Tekken like um situation, a structure where you're kind of it's in the fixed side by side, you're moving backwards and forwards type 2D plane. Do you like that? Because you were mentioning like, oh, I want the single player mode to be more of like a beat 'em up. Do you want them to implement something like that in the next Power Stone game where depending on your distance you are from one another, you have access to the full arena and then maybe it switches over to like a traditional Capcom 2D fighter if you get within a certain distance? Do you think
That
that would be
makes
interesting?
that changes the footsie game like almost completely.
It does, it definitely does. Yeah. You would literally be playing what I said earlier, the 2
Yeah.
different versions of a fighting game, a technical fighting game in one marriage, as it were, at different times. So you'd have, like, what's going on in the background, you'd have the, "Oh, everything's crazy and we're running around," and then it switches over to, like, more of a Street Fighter-esque one. Do you hate that idea?
It'll definitely change the series, but honestly, I think just even having a game come out would be ideal.
You're not opposed to
Whatever.
it, but you definitely have to see how they
Yeah, because like I don't exactly want another Tekken Virtua Fighter Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
Because
I don't want that either. I want it to maintain its Power Stone feel, for
yeah,
sure. I don't want it to be traditional, you know, dash, eight-way dash type, and the camera rotates around you to compensate for that, and you sidestep essentially whatever the attack is. I like the concept of Power Stone, it's always been
yeah.
unique. I definitely think they should maintain the 3D and I mean, I get what you're saying. Um, I think there are 2 different ways you could handle, like, the size, because that is that a Power Stone 1 arena, or is that a 2 that's
Which the one
playing
right
behind
now,
you?
that's Power Stone
Yeah.
1. Power
Power Stone
Stone 2 is like twice or sometimes like 4 times as big because
Ooh.
the stage has changed a lot. And
Yeah,
Power Stone 1 is a lot more footsie based and just trying to outplace your opponent. Then 2 has a lot more random factors like pitfalls and traps, and items are a big focus of that one. They also took away the ability to kick. So like there's no kicking or jump kicking, it's all just punching or throwing items or grabbing.
that's weird.
It is
You don't
weird.
wanna limit people's options, you wanna make it more like, kicks should be in my opinion, kicks should be slower, but have more range, and punches should be quicker, but have less range. It's kind of how it always should be. Sure.
Power Stone also suffers from unbalanced issues of the faster characters are always better.
Yeah,
Because
well, that's every fighting game, though.
yeah,
Let's be
exactly. They
real.
can't seem to figure that one out for the life of them because speed always trumps power. Um,
The only way to trump
essentially, what you
the only way
could
to trump
do,
speed is with super armor. That's how you
yeah,
kind of negate that.
which you do get super armor when you get the power stones, and there's just an exploit with the power stones when you're either Ayame, um, Wang Tang, or um, Falcon. Basically, their Y attack, which is usually their kick, is kind of like a cool. like a uppercut that takes up a lot of the screen. So if you get
Hmm.
someone in a corner, you can just keep using it frame by frame to trap them in a corner and they can't get out.
Is it fully invincible too?
Wang Tang's is Ayame basically like does a disappear, so you can't actually hit her out of it.
Oh, ugh,
And I think Falcon's is the weakest out of them because he actually has his takes time to
yeah.
pull off, so you can definitely hit him out of it. But when you're in a Power Stone form, you have super armor regardless. So
Yeah, and like we said, super armor, for those of you who don't know, super armor is the ability to, when you're using a move, to ignore a hit or a number of hits, um, and continue on with the animation. So if you're dealing against like a faster character that's moves come out quicker than yours, if you have super armor and you Smash Brothers is the best way to kind of accentuate this, as Bowser has tough guy, and Kazuya has super armor and lots of his abilities. So if you
yeah,
start up an attack and you're a heavy, slower character, and they are playing a faster character, and they commit to an attack, even though if it's fast, their move will come out first, but your animation will continue uninterrupted, and you will trade with them. And what usually happens is a faster character does less damage, a heavier, stronger character hurts way more. So in that situation, a trade usually favors the heavier, slower character. Um, so that's kind of like just basic fighting game principles. A heavier, slower character should hit harder in a fighting game. And you see this not just in fighting games either. You see this in boss fights in Dark Souls. You see this in any like action adventure fighting game or RPG. A slower
yeah,
character tends to hit harder, and it kind of makes sense.
yeah. You'll see it across a lot of fighting games. You have like Potemkin in Guilty Gear, Iron Tiger and BlazBlue. They're the same character basically.
Mhm.
Zangief in Street Fighter.
Hugo, Abigail,
Yeah,
yeah, yep,
but
yep.
giving the fast characters super armor just because they have power stones is definitely a balancing issue.
That's a huge issue.
Yeah, but I think Power Stone definitely deserves another game, another shot, and Capcom has the inability to try anything risky these days.
Yeah,
Just because the Dark Age in like 2006, maybe, or well, I'd say early 2000s to 2010s. That whole decade.
that
Yeah,
era was pretty rough for Capcom.
which we can definitely go into that.
Yeah. Yeah, they had some rough times there. They were making some unwise decisions with respects to how they were treating their games.
Yes. And I
Um,
think that like Power Stone can do a lot better now that there's no weird language barrier. The anime in Japan is more like well known these days.
yeah, yeah. It's
And it,
definitely a part of the culture now, like nerd
yeah,
culture in general. Anime is a big part of it. I mean, look at the success of games like Dragon Ball Fighters, right?
yeah,
And all of the Guilty Gear games from Arc System Works, Blaze Blue, Skullgirls, Melty Blood, all of these fighting games that are very anime heavy in their influence and how they tackle things. As a matter of fact, the newly that well, not the newly announced, but the Project L from League of Legends, they recently did an update on that, and it's got a very anime-esque look to it. And Riot Games, like League of Legends itself, is not like an anime game
but it
per
is
se.
an Asian company, isn't it?
Yeah, it has anime influences to a lot of the characters, and
Yeah,
there are things that they do that incorporate anime into them, like Yasuo and Yone's kind of character trailer that they did a little bit back. It is anime influenced, and you can see that in Project L with what they recently showed. Um, it is anime is like that is the big thing, and that's another question I was going to have for you. Do you want it to maintain that anime style, or do you, with respects to the in-game engine that they use, would you be opposed to them doing Resident Evil Devil May Cry 5 look for the game built on the Resident Evil engine, or do you want it to maintain
I would
that
like
that
it
look?
to be maintained in that like anime um cell shaded kind of graphics, because you'll see games like Jump Force that did terribly with their visuals just because they tried to make anime characters look realistic.
Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, which is a Capcom game,
Yeah,
looked terrible. Yeah,
which
looked
I
bad.
think half of the charm is just how bizarre Power Stone is.
Mhm. Yeah,
Like
for sure.
to make it all dark and gritty, like that was kind of Capcom in the 2000s to 2010s, was trying to make everything dark and gritty,
Mhm.
which isn't what they're known for.
No, no. Like they're not known for early '90s, early 2000s, like that era. Um, look, I mean, like look at the Street, the ones that did the best. The Alpha series. It
Hmm.
had a very anime-esque feel to it that was bright and colorful. The character designs for that were just interesting and capitalized on that. And then they switched over to Street Fighter 3. It also had like an anime type
Yeah.
design to it. And then you have games like the Darkstalker series, which is another kind of a dead franchise that we definitely should
Oh
talk
no, it's
about here shortly.
definitely dead.
Yeah, it's dead. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. I think they should maintain the bright, colorful look to it, and the character designs are kind of what makes this game. Like I said, I think it should be closer in the vein to a Pokken Tournament than something like what's a realistic like a more instead of a Tekken, right? It needs to be bright. It needs to have
Hmm.
that that pop, that appeal, that kind of draws people's eyes, and it's got to be kooky and funny. Um, because like a realistic version of this, I don't think I don't think it would sell. I mean, look at Nintendo's success right now in general, just with all of their games. Um, Odyssey, Smash Brothers, Splatoon, all of these games have a bright, colorful appeal to them, and which is what Power Stone was kind of founded on.
Hmm.
These designs that are like they're just fun. They're fun. That's
They're
what they are. They're
definitely
fun.
fun.
Yeah, they're very fun designs.
And Capcom definitely knows Power Stone exists because in several of their games they have references to it. Dead Rising 3, which is the game we're probably gonna talk about, had a Super Dead Rising Ultra Arcade Edition or whatever, where you could dress up as like Falcon in his Power Stone form and use his
Yeah.
abilities. I
Yeah,
think
but
they
that one
did
also has
something
like it has like
recently.
Mega Man stuff too,
Yep,
right?
yep, they
And
have a,
yeah, it has a bunch of different references in that one.
and I think that's what I really liked about the Dead Rising series to begin with, is they kind of don't take themselves seriously.
Yeah, yeah.
But even I think Street Fighter Five had Power Stone
It did.
costumes. So
There's an Ed suit for Ken, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But once again, that's like Capcom knows these franchises exist.
hmm.
Darkstalkers, they have put costumes into Street Fighter 5, like which is like their flagship fighting game, obviously. Despite the chagrin of most. Um, these costumes have appeared these I believe like they've had like just a fair amount of series that
I know they've done
have
Resident Evil.
they've done Devil May Cry, they did Darkstalkers, they did Power Stone, they did I want to say they did Lin Kurosawa from I believe Aliens versus Predators.
Oh,
That's
weird.
yeah. He did that's like a color scheme if I'm not mistaken. Um yeah, they've made mention of a lot of these series where it's just like if they did Beautiful Joe because that's
Yeah.
Rashid's skin. Yeah, they're like they know. They know. And they know that and this is kind of an overarching theme that I have for a lot of these dead franchises. Rival Schools, which is like you can see a picture behind me. That's another one that they've abandoned. And they just recently kind of threw it back into the mix with Akira and Street Fighter 5. Um, they know that, and most companies should realize that fan service sells. And that's none the more apparent than with Smash Brothers and the platformer era that we're kind of seeing happening right now, the platformer brawler. Um, Guest characters sell. Mortal
Well,
Kombat is big about that.
another company that knows fan service sells is Sega. That's like kind of
Sega.
their whole thing now is just throw every game into every game we make.
And that's
Like
what
the
you
Yakuza
want,
series for sure.
right? People love these hype moments.
Yeah.
My favorite streamer, as Maximilian Dude says, hype is what sells games. It does. When you see something and you're like, "Oh shit, I want to play this because this character is in this game or the way that this game looks or the gameplay aspect of the game, it looks fun." That's what makes people like us,
Hmm.
gamers, they want to play these games. They want to spend the money or pick it up as a demo and try it out and then later purchase the game. Um that's what does it for us, and Capcom knows this, and they're capitalizing on it with a lot of their alternate costumes and things and appearances that they're putting. Look at Street Fighter and what it literally over the course of the past month has been announced that it is in. Fortnite, now Brawlhalla, that happened. Ryu and Ken and Akuma are now in, or excuse me, Ryu and Chun-Li and Akuma are in Brawlhalla. Gal Kami, Ryu and Chun-Li are in Fortnite skins. Um, and it just keeps Smash Brothers. Ryu and Ken are in Smash Brothers, and they know that these characters, they know that Street Fighter is a huge franchise. Um, and they could make these other franchises huge if they invested the time and the care to make them good.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is that they where the games that they released were less quality than what they should have been. And then the sales reflected that. And
Yeah.
so now, like you said, they're scared to take risks. They are. And they kind of that's not the message they should have taken from that though. The problem it was the presentation of these things. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite is one of the worst looking fighting games of all time, with a very shitty roster. Um,
Broken
Street Fighter,
mechanics.
yeah, the mechanics of the game are actually brilliant. Like that is one of the most fun, uh, like what are they called, tag based fighters that's ever been played with respects to how it plays. The problem is a lot of the other shit that they put in there that doesn't go well, and that's the problem that was with Street Fighter as well. Street Fighter 5 started out as an incomplete game. It had no modes, it had a very limited roster, and then they built it up, and now it's good. It's what it should have been when it first came out. Um, and that's really the problem, is that Capcom needs to take they're kind of doing that. They're on the redemption arc right now.
Yeah.
With games like the Resident Evil series, Monster Hunter, Devil May Cry, all of those games that they've recently released have been bangers. They all slap hard.
If
And
they
then
can put
this
enough care into their games like they did with like RE2 remake, RE3 remake, they'll do good.
Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter Rise,
Yeah.
Devil May Cry 5, all amazing games. And they are fan servicey to the extreme. Uh, and even the recent additions that they made to Street Fighter 5 are the same way. The problem is that the fighting game division of Street Fighter or of Capcom, it has left every other franchise behind. Power Stone, Rival Schools, Marvel vs. Capcom. Even though there's been a big resurgence of bring back or save MVC2, uh, they've just abandoned Darkstalkers. These series that people love, they actively want to see. They do things like, and this is just sad. They do things like, oh, we're re-releasing or we're remaking, remastering Darkstalkers, and your purchases determine if we continue on with the series. People don't want a 16-year-old game. They don't. Like you would have to like if you wanted that to sell, you would have to remaster it. You'd have to remake the first game and make it look like modern fighting games do, and then that would have sold. But the fact that you just went, okay, we're upscaling it to 60 frames per second. It still looks the same though as the original Darkstalkers. Here you go. People didn't want that. That's not what
Well,
they wanted.
and having all these old franchises, especially fighting games, which take no effort to port over, you can at least make like collections or something.
Yeah, like a Darkstalkers HD collection,
Yeah.
which Resurrection was like. I guess it was kind of. Once again, I didn't buy it, and like no one, they didn't get enough of for that one, right? They didn't. It did not like the new Street Fighter games that they released, like
Yeah.
the HD Super Turbo remaster, whatever the hell that was. That one sold really well for them.
But yeah,
But then
no.
again, it had a completely different look than it was like updated anime graphics, right? For
Yeah.
that one. And it looked simple, but it looked good. People bought that. They bought that shit up quick. They're like, "Oh, you're putting Violent Kin in the game? Okay, yeah, we'll
Yeah.
buy that."
But
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, Capcom's changed throughout the years. Like just their flagship title, Mega Man, which was like basically everyone knows what Mega Man is. They haven't really done anything with that. They're too afraid to release new games or try different
Well,
ideas
I
for
mean,
the
they
games.
they released Mega Man 11 not too long ago, and to be honest, Mega Man 11 it sold well, and it was really fun. Um, the problem is that once you have that success, you have to capitalize on it. You have to
Yeah.
move forward. You have to do what like Sega did. This is what's funny. You have things like right before Mega Man 11 released, if I'm not mistaken, they did like a Street Fighter crossover with Mega Man, and they had it to where you were fighting the Street Fighter characters as robot bosses
Yeah.
essentially, and the final secret fight was with Akuma. That was amazing. That got hype up for Mega Man. People loved that shit. Um, and I don't can't remember if it was. I don't think it was fan made. I think it was literally through Street Fighter. But then you have like through Capcom. But then you have people like Sega, and the fucking the Sonic Mania crew and things of that nature, where they started out as like, oh, we just made like a fan game,
Yep.
and Sega loved it, and they hired us on to make the next Sonic game. Like that's
Yeah.
insane. That's
Sega's a
kind of
lot
what you need to do.
less like fascist about their IPs
Hmm.
when it comes to fans.
You have to find people who love your games
Yeah.
and kind of give them the chance to knock it out of the park. Which is why, and I had a conversation with Mike and with our friend Josh the other day, and it was about FF7 Remake. And the reason that that game worked is because they hired people who specifically loved the original game and had them on their development crew. It's the same with Smash Brothers. They hire these. Sakurai himself loves any character he puts in the game. He usually loves the franchise that it's associated with, and he has a deep respect for it. And so he wants to represent it accurately and make it fun. And that's you gotta have that mentality when you're developing games, and if you want them to sell. People gotta at least they gotta see that you love what you're doing, and it's gotta show in the game, and that you're having fun, and they'll have fun.
And yeah, no, Capcom like really doesn't know how to talk to fans at all. Their
They're
whole
getting
E3,
better.
they're getting better, but their E3
Yeah.
conference was
Oh, bad.
not well informed.
No, no.
They just
And
talked
and I
about
think
esports for 10
yeah, and I
minutes
think
and
it's
then
because they kinda wanna go the way that, PlayStation, like, the way that Sony is going, and you can tell it's that way because they're having visual directs for titles. Um, Most notably, Monster Hunter kinda started it, and then they adapted that into Devil May Cry, Resident Evil, and Street Fighter. They're doing individual shows that are, like, anywhere from 20 to 40 and it's like, "Oh, here's what's coming up." "Oh, with the release of Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, here's what we're putting into the game. Here's a 30-minute direct on what we're doing and why it's better." Monster Hunter Rise. Oh, well, we're next year we're doing an expansion to that, but right now let's talk about everything we're doing for November. 20-minute direct. And, that's just the way to and that's I mean, I love that format. I absolutely
yeah,
adore that
no,
format.
Capcom's doing really well with I Monster Hunter just integrating the other series into it and
Mhm.
using a lot of fan service and actually talking to the fans that way. But
Yep.
that is just the one franchise, but I mean, it makes them money, right?
Yeah. Well, I
Like,
mean, loads of money. Monster Hunter World sold incredibly well.
yeah, they're just doing like a Sonic campaign.
That's so
right
weird.
now.
That is so weird. After coming off of, like, Akuma and Monster Hunter Rise, they're like, "It's time for si" that was definitely a leap for sure. But I'm
Not
game.
for
Uh,
Sega, but for Capcom for sure. Because like Sega has a bunch of events on their Fantasy Star online all the time, like Sonic for sure. So they already
yeah,
know how to do all that. And I feel like Capcom's definitely taking a page from them for sure.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where we want, Capcom to move forward with a lot of these series that are dead. We want the fan service. We want them back, and we want them done well.